Type B, contracts for construction, contracts for traveling, holidays, marriage venues, performance of various acts in theaters and cinemas, contracts for contracts to supply labor, material, goods, etc. So situation shall certainly arise as to how to deal with these various queries and challenges arising out of this unprecedented time. So our honorable speaker has chosen today's topic, that is force majeure and frustration of contract with reference to the COVID-19. I again welcome our honorable speaker, Mr. Sandesh Patil sir, and request him to start with his lecture. Thank you very much.
Mr. Dongre, shall we begin?
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. The President of the Thane Bar Association, Mr. Kadam, Secretary of the Thane Bar Association, Mr. Matre, and since this is a lecture in our Thane Bar, therefore, as a protocol, I have addressed you first. But first and foremost, I must also welcome the learned ASD, Mr. Anil Singh, who is also online and who is here purely out of love and affection for me. One of a leading practitioner from Bombay High Court, Mr. Surel Shah, and many others who have joined here. So let me now begin with our topic for today's discussion, which is force majeure. Now, ever since this COVID 2019 has stepped in, each and every person is thinking about their economic life as to how they will begin with, how they will end up with their contracts, how they will start with their contracts, how they will honor their contract. And therefore, it's very necessary, and this topic is a topic of great relevance today. We have therefore chosen this topic. As far as COVID-19 is concerned, there are some professionals whose profession, the effect on their profession is evident right now, just now. For example, medical profession. Medical profession, the effect on medical profession is evident to us right now. We know what is the effect on medical profession. But as far as the profession of a lawyer is concerned, the effect is not evident right now. The effect will be evident after the lockdown is over. Now, as it is, we don't honor any contract, we don't honor any commitment, we cannot go and work. So it's very difficult for us to work in this COVID because there are restrictions imposed by the government. But the moment these restrictions are uplifted, there will be a sudden surge in litigation. The litigation will spiral. It will be difficult to control the litigation. And at this juncture, we should have a good knowledge of how the contracts during the period of COVID, before the period of COVID and after the period of COVID are to be dealt with. We should have a good knowledge as to how and what will be the effect of COVID on the contracts which are executed. So this is in a nutshell the reason why we have chosen this topic. The topic will be effect of COVID 2019 with reference to doctrine of frustration and force majeure. This COVID will have vast effect. Take for example hotel industry. Take for example theaters. Take for example agreements for the purpose of sale of goods and garments. Take any contract which you know, you will see that these contracts which are there, they will have some effect of the lockdown and they will have some effect of the COVID. The horizon of this subject is so vast that even if 2 or 3 days are devoted to this subject, it would be very difficult to deal with this subject. And therefore, I have deliberately decided to churn out certain important judgments and certain important aspects of this subject. So let us begin with the subject force measure. Now, as you know, force measure is something which is not defined anywhere. Our entire Indian contract in India is governed by Indian Contracts Act. But interestingly enough, force measure is not even mentioned in Contract Act, Indian Contract Act, leave aside defined. Force measure is an alien term to us. It's a foreign concept. Indian Contract Act does not by name recognize force measure. And therefore, in order to understand force measure, we have to look into three different concepts. Force measure as is evident in the British law, because we are generally looking into law of Britain. Then we have to understand force measure with respect to certain governments, certain sections from our Indian Contract Act itself. So let us understand and let us see what is the meaning of the word force measure. This force measure is not defined in the Contract Act.
Okay, continue, sir.
Where I believe, yes.
Continue, sir. Continue.
The dictionary meaning of force measure as given in the Black's Law Dictionary is an event or effect that can neither be anticipated nor being controlled.
Yeah.
So, as I said, the dictionary meaning is an event or an effect that can neither be anticipated nor being controlled. So, there are two aspects. That number one, there cannot be an anticipation of the event and there cannot be a control over the event, and therefore we call it a force measure. Now, anticipation doesn't mean that we can never anticipate the event. It's not in that sense. Anticipate means that we never know when this event will take place or in which manner this event will take place. That is the real meaning of the word anticipated. The anticipated does not qualify the word event, it qualifies the word, the manner and the time when it takes place. So that is the meaning as enunciated in the Black's Law Dictionary of the word force measure. Now, before we begin with force measure in details, let me come directly to a judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court, which was decided while laying down the case, while laying down the law in Dhanrajmal Govindmal versus Shamlalji Kalidas. This is the judgment of Dhanrajmal Govindmal versus Shamlalji Kalidas, reported in AIR 1961. I repeat, reported in AIR 1961, Supreme Court 1285. Now, when this judgment was delivered, at that time, the Honorable Court was posed with a question, with a query as to what is meaning of force measure. Whether force measure means something like storm, hurricane, volcano, etc., or it means something more than that. The Honorable Apex Court, while deciding this, has taken into consideration two different terms. Number one, force measure, and there is a similar word which sounds similar like force measure, but it is not force measure. That is vis measure. So the Honorable Apex Court was dealing in the judgment of Dhanrajmal Govindmal versus Shamlalji Kalidas. While dealing with this judgment, the Honorable Apex Court had opportunity to consider two things, two different terms, force measure and vis measure. The Honorable Apex Court, while deciding that, held in para number 17 that vis measure is a Latin word, is a Latin term, and it implies act of God alone. So Honorable Supreme Court says it implies act of God alone. Whereas force measure can be an act of God as well as an act of people. To give an example to distinguish between force measure and vis measure, I must illustrate that vis measure is something like storm, tempest, hurricane, volcano, earthquake, etc. Force measure includes all these things, but apart from that, in addition to this, force measure includes act of people like strike, war, terrorist attack, etc. Whether COVID will be included in force measure or not, I am coming to that. But this is what was decided by the Honorable Apex Court while distinguishing between the Latin term vis measure and the term force measure, which is, so you get an idea of what is force measure. To sum up now, force measure is something which is an act of God as well as act of people. Now, what is the, now I should have begun with this word at the initial stage itself, but I must point out that when the Contract Act was there, right from the beginning, you take 500 or 600, 400 years of history of the British people or the French people, you will see that always these people believed that the contract should be adhered to, should be respected in principle. The contract should always be obeyed as it is. And therefore, I'll take you back to the year 1600, 1600, year 1600. We are in 2020 today. I'm taking you back to the year 1600. At that time, the monarch, the king of Britain was ruling. So there was a celebrated judgment, Paradine versus Jane. Paradine versus Jane. In this judgment, it had so happened that the defendant therein had taken on lease an estate. And because the alien enemy attacked that portion of land, and therefore the alien enemy, if you are getting the citation of Paradine on Zoom as well as Facebook also, my juniors have made an arrangement of giving the citation which I am saying. The citation which year and all I am giving page number. So you're getting that on the screen itself. So in the year 1600, the defendant took a estate on lease from the plaintiff, and there was an alien attack of the alien enemy. The defendant could not cultivate the land because of the attack of the enemy. The defendant claimed that the contract could not be taken place, and therefore it was a void contract. The King's Bench at that time ruled in the year 1600 that no, nothing doing. The contract has to be obeyed as it is. You cannot afford to have deviation in the contract. Contract should be obeyed as it is, and the sanctity of the contract should be followed and fulfilled. You cannot remove anything from the contract, and therefore this principle is called as pacta sunt servanda. P-A-C-T-A, pacta, S-U-N-T, sunt, S-E-R-V-A-D-A. So pacta sunt servanda means the contract has to be obeyed in letter and spirit. You cannot remove something, add something, and turn the contract as far as you want. But this happened in 1600. Now, in the year 1800, same court, it was now a Queen's Bench. As you know the history, the Queen was the monarch at that time. The Queen's Bench, in the matter of Taylor versus Caldwell, ruled, the facts were this, that a theatre was taken for performing some act by the defendant. And on the day on which the act was to be performed, without any mistake of either the plaintiff or either the defendant, the theatre was blown into fire. Then the defendant claimed that, sorry, I cannot perform the contract because the theatre is not there. So the courts at that time took a view that yes, this is something which was beyond the acts of the parties, beyond the intention of the parties, beyond the capacity of the parties, and therefore the doctrine of force majeure would be invoked. So now we got it that initially in the year 1600, court says nothing doing, we don't know anything. Pacta sunt servanda, that is the contract should be obeyed in letter and spirit should be followed. But in the year 1800, the same court says that yes, that force majeure will come into and force majeure can be read into. So this is how from here itself there started a tussle between the two principles, that is force majeure and pacta sunt servanda. These two are antithesis to each other. They are not complementary to each other. They run against each other. Because whenever force majeure clause is invoked, you have to go somewhere which is contrary to what the parties has envisaged. Now, after saying so, this was the difference between, we have seen difference between force majeure and vis majeure, and force majeure and pacta sunt servanda. Now let us see what is the position of force majeure in the Indian Act. Indian Contract Act, as I said, does not recognize or does not use the, I'm sorry, not recognize, but does not use the word force majeure. But there are two sections in Indian Contract Act which are very important and which have very important in context to force majeure. Which are those sections? Those sections are section 32 of the Contract Act and section 56 of the Contract Act. The entire lecture of today will be based on section 32 and section 56. Now, just see, section 32 is enforcement of contingent contract. First, we'll only plainly see what is 32 and 56. So 32, you can read the 32 from the statute, but 32 says that if there is a contract which will be depending upon happening of something, if that thing does not happen, the contract becomes void. Or if the thing becomes impossible to happen, that contract becomes void. This is called contingent contract. And section 56 is something called as frustration of contract. But let me give you a hint that section 32 is analogous, is similar, or is near to the concept of force majeure. And section 56 is analogous and is near to doctrine of frustration of contract, which is found in the British laws. Now let us begin with section 56. Section 56 says if there is an agreement to do an impossible act, then it is void. But the main part, the main substratum of section 56 is this: a contract to do an act which after the contract is made becomes impossible. Becomes impossible. At that time, the contract becomes impossible and therefore it cannot be performed. That contract becomes void. And then the later part of section 56 says that if the person, the promisor, knew that this contract will be frustrated or there is a likelihood of this contract being frustrated, but still he enters into a promise with somebody, then in that event, the promisee, the person who has suffered because of the contract, can claim damages. Now this is 32 and 56. Now let me explain you 32 and 56 in plain words. 32 is contingent contract. For example, although this contract is not a legalized contract in India, but just for example, let me give you that there is a cricket match of India and Pakistan. I promise my friend that if India wins, I will give you 200 rupees. If Pakistan wins, you will give me. So this is something contingent. It depends upon a contingency. Contingency, namely, winning of the match by either side. So this is a bad example of contingent contract, but of course not a legitimate and a legal example. This is gambling, which is prohibited. But nevertheless, it's a good example to just simplify. Now, what is section 56? Now, when we said in 32 that if India wins, I will give you this much, and if Pakistan wins, you will give me this much, then you knew that there is a likelihood of either of the two winning. You know three things. Number one, there is a match. Number two, there is a cricket match played between India and Pakistan. And you also know that either India or Pakistan, somebody has to win. But 56 is different. 56 says that if at the time of entering of the promise, the conditions were not known to the person, both the persons, And if by default, either something turns out and the conditions cannot be fulfilled at all, then that contract is a contract under section 56 of the Contract Act. So the difference is this: in 32, you know that there is a possibility of the contract ending into either a good contract or a bad contract or being hit by a contingency. But in section 56, you do not know before that. That is the difference. So to simplify section 56, let me point out this example. Suppose I go to Himachal Pradesh and I am a regular trekker over there. So one day I go for a trekking and I tell the person over there, I hire a guide and a vehicle saying that, well, I want now to go to Rohtang Pass, but I am a regular trekker, professional trekker. So I know that the treks are there. Now, when it is a fantastic summer, the atmosphere is very good, and suddenly on the midway, there is a heavy snowfall and there is a declaration by the government, by the army saying that, well, now that Rohtang Pass is closed. We neither of us anticipated even by due diligence, because when we left, we had occasion to see the weather reports, everything was fine. But due to act of God, snow falls in and we are unable to go there. This is something which is called as 56. When we entered into contract, we never knew. But now due to snowfall, there is a likelihood that the possibility of going to Rohtang Pass has been diminished. And both the parties never knew that this would happen. And therefore, this is something which is called as 56. So let me take now when compensation is paid in 56. Suppose I am a layman, I am not from India. So take a case, I am from Nepal, and one day I come to, or take a case, I am from Sri Lanka, and I go to Himachal Pradesh and I tell the guide that take me to Rohtang Pass. This is the guide fee and this is the contract for the purpose of vehicles. I don't know anything about this Rohtang Pass. I don't know that there can be a weather report. There is a weather report, and my tour agent or my guide knows about this. He accepts money and he knows that he has seen the weathercast, and he knows that there might be a snowfall and there might be a possibility of closure. And he was also given a message well in advance by the weather department. In spite of that, he doesn't tell me, and he goes there, and on the way everything is closed because of heavy snowfall. Now the promiser, my guide, my vehicle owner knew about this. In spite of this, he did not tell me. I never knew about this. In that event, I am entitled for compensation. That is what 56 says. So this is what is called 32 and this is 56. I have given you illustrations for the purpose, because there are many newcomers in the bar who have joined. For their benefit, I have given you this example. Now, if we see, this is about, so we saw doctrine of frustration, we saw vis major versus frustration. We also saw vis major frustration, force major versus vis major. Vis major versus, we have seen Pacta and Savada. Then we have seen the difference. What is force major in our Indian Contract Act 32 and 56? We now therefore move to the next topic. That topic is, what is the difference between force major and frustration? Because today's topic says force major and frustration. So let us understand what is force major and what is frustration. I'm sorry. So 32 is force major and 56 is frustration, not in literal sense, but in practical sense. Because Contract Act doesn't say this. It is by implication 32 means force major and 56 means frustration. What is the difference? In 32, you know, in the contract itself, there is a stipulation. You know that there is a possibility of this thing happening. For example, if I engage a ship for sailing in the high seas and delivering my jute to some distant country in rainy season, I know that there is a possibility of high winds and rain in the ocean, and therefore I have decided that I will not go myself, and I have given this contract to somebody else. We both mention in the agreement that, well, if something happens due to storm and wind and rain, and if the vessel is drowned, both will not be responsible. This is force majeure, because number one, we knew that there is a possibility of rain, there is a possibility of vehicle being damaged. This is force majeure. So this is difference between force majeure. In frustration, it so happens that we don't know. Let us go to some distant years of 1957-58, or before that probably. At that time, opium, you know opium, it's a narcotic substance. So this opium, trade of opium was legal at that time, legitimate at that time. Overnight, the government announced that opium cannot be traded, and it became a substance of narcotic, and it was banned. Now take a case, before banning of this, I enter into agreement with a third person for the supply of 5 kgs of opium before banning. And it so happens that as soon as the agreement is entered into, there was no prohibition on sale and purchase of opium. Suddenly, the law comes overnight. We both never knew that law will come, and sale and purchase of opium becomes illegal. At that juncture, frustration steps in. So this is the difference between frustration and force majeure. Now, I must point out that the same difference which is there in 32 and the section 56 is the same difference which is there for force majeure and frustration. Once we say that 32 is somewhat equal to force majeure and 56 is somewhat equal to frustration, then the difference between force majeure and frustration will be the same difference which will be there between 32 and 56. But since we are on a legal platform today, we are amidst lawyers, legal fraternity, let us see what is the real difference between force majeure, where it is mentioned. So we will have to fall back to the judgment of Energy Watchdog versus CERC. Energy Watchdog versus CERC. It's a recent judgment reported in 2017, 14 SCC, page 80. I repeat, 2017, 14 SCC, page 80. The facts were very interesting. Adani Power had entered into contract with various governments, more particularly the government of Haryana in this case, and they were supposed to supply energy to Haryana government. Now, this energy was to be constructed, or was to be raised, or was to be obtained by virtue of coal. It was the raw material for this energy, development of this energy. So what happened was this: coal was the basic element. Now in Indonesia, this coal was to be imported from Indonesia. Suddenly the prices of Indonesia, which were so firm for last 40 years, suddenly they were shooted up. Coal became costly. Adani Power says we cannot now go on with the contract because there is a sudden rise in price which we never knew, and now what we should do. So this was the judgment. These were the facts in case. At that time, the court, while dealing with Energy Watchdog, has given in details as to what is the difference between section 32 and section 52. I am coming to Energy Watchdog in subsequent illustration also, because Energy Watchdog is very important judgment while deciding between frustration of contract and force majeure. Section 32 and section 56. Now, there is a very recent judgment. This judgment is just of 22nd April 2020. Very recent judgment. Therefore, this is not reported. The Honorable Supreme Court, the 3 judges of the Honorable Supreme Court, Justice Arun Mishra, Justice M.R. Shah, and His Lordship Justice Gawai, had occasion to deliver this judgment very recently that is after the lockdown began. The judgment is NAFED, NAFED versus Alimentia SA. It was delivered in civil appeal number 667 of 2012. NAFED is National Agricultural Cooperative Marketing Federation of India. It is a canalizing agency of Indian government. Now the contract was this: they wanted to, this Alimentia SA was a foreign company. They entered into contract with NAFED, NAFED, for purchase of groundnut. In that contract, there was a clause, section 14, clause 14, article 14 of that contract, which says that if for some reason the government is not ready or the government cancels the permission to export, then none of the parties will be responsible. There was a special stipulation therein. The learned trial court, the High Court, took a view that this doctrine is covered under section 56. This agreement is covered under section 56 because perhaps at that time when the contract was entered into, supply of groundnut, there was no difficulty. But now after the contract was entered into, there is some difficulty. And in fact, the government did not permit NAFED to export groundnut. NAFED therefore cancelled the contract, was unable to proceed with the contract. I will not go into much other facts of the matter, but at this juncture, the Honorable Apex Court refused to execute that contract and set aside that contract, saying that because there was a stipulation in the contract itself that if the government does not give permission, then the contract cannot be executed. The Honorable Apex Court took a view that this is not a subject matter of section 56, but this is a subject matter of 32. The Honorable Apex Court says that since the parties were aware that there might be this possibility, contingency, and this contingency was mentioned in the agreement itself, more particularly in Article 14 of the agreement, therefore, this is something which is called as contingent contract, and therefore section 32 is applicable. Now, we have seen what is the meaning of section 32. We have seen what is the meaning of section 56. Now, the question is this: how to distinguish? Again, now we are going much further. How to distinguish between section 46 and section 32? In England, in UK and in USA, there is no law codified like we have here. So they go by the interpretation, principles of interpretation, principles of intention of the parties, and they go by doctrine of force majeure, and they go by doctrine of frustration. In India, we go by 32 and 56. So that is the major difference. Although force majeure is something which we say in normal life, but while analyzing the matter in terms of law, we have to go by section 32 and 56 itself. No other view is possible or permissible. There is a very celebrated judgment. I mean to say that force majeure 32 and 56 will be incomplete without taking reference of this case law. You take any lecture on force majeure, you take any example of force majeure 32 or 56, any case, any topic, any lecture, you will find that Satyabrata Ghosh versus Mungneri Ram. This is the celebrated judgment on contingent on 32 and 56. So Satyabrata Ghosh versus Mungneri Ram, 1954, SCR 310, or AIR 1954 Supreme Court 444. My colleagues will shortly be posting this judgment on this platform just now. We'll get it so that our young friends can definitely judge this judgment. So in this judgment, the Honorable Apex Court held that unlike foreign laws or unlike laws in England and USA, we don't have to go into the intention of the parties. We have to go only and only upon what is written in the contract, what is written in 32, whether 32 is applicable or whether 56 is applicable, and we have to analyze the facts and circumstances of the case with context, and after reading section 32 and section 56 of the Contract Act. In short, it is impermissible for us to go by the common law doctrine of force majeure or doctrine of frustration, and we have to go strictly in accordance with the judgments of the law of the Honorable Apex Court as enunciated in section 32 and section 56. There are two more judgments. Niyati Jute Mills versus Khayali Ram, reported in 1968, Supreme Court 522. Niyati Jute Mills versus Khayali Ram, reported in 1968, Supreme Court 522. This court says that unlike we in our country, we don't face the courts in our countries do not face the dilemma which the courts in foreign countries face, because in India there is a codified law. Now we'll appreciate that, although we say that yes, Britishers are the people who had laid down, who were responsible for codifying law in India. But remember, they did not do it because of benevolent motive. Their motive was not something very benevolent or charitable. India was a test ground for them to test their own laws. Lord Macaulay had once said that while drafting those criminal laws, he was supposed to, or he was virtually testing. This was a test ground for them, and therefore, really speaking, the laws which were there in India are subsequent laws, and therefore there is much perfection attained to these laws. And the very fact you will acknowledge that CRPC, Evidence Act, IPC, hundreds of years ago, these laws are there, and except few amendments, we did not have, we were not required to amend those laws extensively. Unlike our Indian laws, which require 1,000, if you go to BT and AL Act, this is an Indian law. We were required to amend it many times. But see, the ingenuity of the person, Lord Macaulay, when he drafted all these laws, and even these laws which were drafted by the parliament, just see the beauty of these laws. They do not require any outside help. So force majeure and something frustration doctrine which is available outside, we need not look into it. We have to look only in 32 and 56. So let me go back once again. Let me recapitulate it. We have seen what is difference between vis majeure and force majeure. Vis majeure means act of God. Force majeure means act of God as well as act of people. We have seen between pacta sunt servanda, and we have seen between force majeure, that is whether the contract should be obeyed as it is or whether we can interpret, or force majeure or subsequent events can have a bearing. Then we have seen the difference between force majeure and frustration, which is equal to difference between 32 and 56. Then we have seen how 32 should be interpreted, and we have seen how 56 is interpreted. So with this, we finish the basic element of the law. The statute, we have seen the statute. We have seen the substantive law on this subject. Now let me take few important things about this. The word which is used in 56, when the contract becomes impossible, that is the word which is used. Contract become impossible means what? Whether impossible is equal to impractical. But what is the word meaning of word impossible? Because 56 says that if at the time of entering, for those who have joined late, if at the time of entering into the contract was okay, the possibility was okay, but if at the time, suddenly after the entering of the contract, if there is some difficulty and the contract cannot be carried out further, then the question will be as to what is the impact on the contract. Then it becomes impossible, then the contract is void. But what is the meaning of this word impossible? Now we are going much deeper in 56. Whether impossible means impossible only or something more than that. So we have a celebrated judgment on this. Sushila Devi versus Hari Singh. Very old judgment. Sushila Devi versus Hari Singh. And this judgment, the citation is 1971 2 SCC 288. 1971 2 SCC 288. This is the citation. Very interesting case. I will just give in 5 minutes what is the background of this. There was one lady called Vidyavanti. This lady was situated on the border of India and Pakistan. In the year 1947, this lady had a very peculiar and good habit of, she was a landlady, thousands of acres of land. What she used to do, she used to invite tenders and she used to call for tenders for the purpose of letting her land on lease to people for 3 years. For 3 years, these people to whom the land was given used to collect rent from the actual cultivator and give some portion to Vidyavanti and keep the some portion to themselves. Now, in the year 1946, she entered into contract with one such person, Hari Singh. Now, it so happened that in the year 1947, this contract was to start, and in the year 1950, it was to an end. Now, even before the partition, you know that partition of India, if you have seen Freedom of Midnight and if you have seen the last Viceroy who had written about the freedom, it happened, it was not a question of deliberation of few years. It happened only in 1 or 2 months. Suddenly it happened. So, this 1947, everything was all right. And suddenly, the moment partition was announced, riots started taking place. The moment riots started taking place, the person who was, and eventually the land for which the tender was invited, agreement was entered into, went into Pakistan. So, before it went into Pakistan, it was not possible because it was impracticable. Now see the difficulty. The land is there, the cultivators are there, the contractor is there, that is the promisor is there, the promise is there, but it is not practical to go to Pakistan and cultivate it. And even before partition, it was not possible for those few years, few months. Therefore, the court says that forget about impossibility. It is impracticable. So therefore, in this judgment, Sushila Devi versus Hari Singh, it was for the first time held that not only impossible, but even if the property or if the contract becomes impracticable for some reason, it should not be performed. Now, many of our people feel that force majeure is the answer for everything which is done in COVID. You can brush all the things inside the carpet on the pretext of force majeure. No, that is not so. There are certain things, even in force majeure, there are certain things which cannot be excused. I will give an example. Let us suppose the contract becomes economical onerous, that is economically impracticable or difficult for some person. Now, let me give you an example. Alopi Prasad, this is a citation. Alopi Prasad versus Union of India. Alopi Prasad versus Union of India, AIR 1960, Supreme Court 588. Alopi Prasad versus Union of India, AIR 1960, Supreme Court 588. Now, it had so happened that the contractor in this case, in the year this also happened during the just shortly after independence, 1947-48 judgment contract. The contractor was supposed to provide ghee. Ghee means what you call tup in Marathi. Ghee to the soldiers in the army. suddenly the prices of the ghee shoot up. The contractor says that either revise me the contract or I am not going to perform because the contract has frustrated. Because it can become economically onerous. You are paying me, suppose take a case example, 200 rupees to me for per unit. Now the price of the ghee itself has become 200 rupees. Therefore, it is not profitable for me. The court at this juncture says in Alopi Prasad that no, because the price has increased, there is an escalation in price. We are not supposed to turn down the contract, and the contract will be obeyed, has to obey in all circumstances. So merely because economically the contract has become onerous is no answer for force majeure also. Forget about frustration. In the year 2017, I said at the outset itself that while analyzing Energy Watchdog, the judgment of 2000 versus CERC, 2017 judgment, same facts were there. Coal was to be procured from Indonesia, prices of the coal rise up, was high. As a matter of fact, Adani at that time had entered into a contract to be competitive. Adani said that even if there is an escalation in price, I will not ask for more money. Therefore, the Honorable Supreme Court, while deciding Energy Watchdog versus CERC, says that even though there is a onerous contract, economically, even though it is not possible for you, this is not force majeure, this is not frustration, this is not 32, this is not 56. So this is how the Honorable Supreme Court was pleased to decide about the contract. Now, there is yet another thing. So we saw three things about this force majeure. The first thing which we saw was that even if it is not only impracticable, but not only impossible, but also impracticable, we also saw that even if it is economically onerous, then also you have to obey it. And now we are talking about when force majeure and when frustration will not come into place. There is something called as doctrine of mitigation and doctrine of due diligence, doctrine of best endeavor. I will take the three doctrines together. Doctrine of due diligence, doctrine of mitigation of losses, and doctrine of best endeavor. Just excuse me for a moment. Now, this doctrine of mitigation means what? That due diligence means what? And best endeavor means what? Now, suppose if I enter into contract with some person, I am a contractor. I have a warehouse, huge warehouse. In this warehouse, it is in the coastal area. Fishermen, local fishermen, keep their fishes in my custody for safe preservation. Now, I am a very clever businessman. I know that sometimes light go off. This is in Konkan, take a case. Sometimes light goes off in my area. So what I do is this. I have installed a huge generator. I have installed, there is a fluctuation of light, therefore I have established a stabilizer also. I have installed a stabilizer, I'm sorry, not established, installed a stabilizer. I have taken all the care to say that best electric equipment is there in my unit. In spite of this, one day what happens? By act of God, there is a huge imbalance of supply of electricity, and suddenly the electricity is gone for 2 days. Nothing happens. The energy company people do not come. For 2 days, the energy is gone. All the fish perishes. The question is this: will I be excused under the doctrine of frustration, doctrine of force majeure, 32 or 56? The approach of the court is as follows. The court says that you have to take into consideration two things. Number one, did you try to mitigate the loss? Mitigate means whether you try to reduce. In Marathi we may say, आपण त्यांना prevent कमी करायचा प्रयत्न केला का? Did you try to, did you perform due diligence, and whether there was a best endeavor case? So now what I will put up in support of my case, I will say that look here, as a businessman, prudent businessman, taking into consideration, anticipating, and taking into consideration the contingency that there might be a fluctuation in the current and the equipments may spoil, may be destroyed. Therefore, I have installed stabilizer. I have installed, taking into consideration the electricity will be gone. I have installed generator. I have installed the best possible wires, the electric equipment. What can I do after this? So I have taken due care and attention, due diligence. I have tried to mitigate the loss. Forget it. Even after the electricity was gone, I brought I brought ice from different places. I had placed the fishes in that ice to see that there is a proper cooling of those fishes and they are not perished. In spite of the fact the fishes perished because this ad hoc arrangement cannot be done for a long time, and because there was a massive failure in the grid itself, like we heard when the Honorable Prime Minister was saying, some people were saying that if all the electricity is put off, then there will be a failure in the grid. I'm not going into the merits of that, but that is what is called a failure in the grid. So this happened for the entire zone. I am not responsible. But since I have taken maximum care to mitigate the losses, I have taken due diligence. Therefore, I am not responsible for the same. Now there is a direct judgment on this. Very interesting judgment on this. Province of Madras versus Machado. Province of Madras versus Machado. Reported in 1954, SCC Online, Madras, page 519. Reported in 1954, SCC Online, Madras, page 519. Now, just in short, I will just give you what are the facts of the case. Here, from Travancore, the ship was supposed to sail and deliver goods to foreign country. Now, they had one person who was in charge of the ship, and that person was name of, I'll just give the name, Ibrahim Putti was the name. Interestingly enough, he was the person who would drive the vehicle, but he was not a person who was conversant with the route, because now we have got all these instruments. At that time, this was 1954. So at that time, we did not have instruments. So what happened when the ship was sailing in rough seas, rough weather, rainy weather, storm, suddenly the ship, they anchored the ship in one area which was interestingly known as Devil's Point. So this was not a good area to anchor the ship. And at that time, there was a person known as Rosia, who was actually the guide. That guide was not on the ship at that time. And that guide was far away outside. And the person called as Ibrahim Putti, who was not conversant with the road, was in charge of the ship. When the loss occurred to the ship, the person whose shipment the ship was selling sued the company. The court says that yes, had it been you had taken due diligence, this would not have taken place. Had it been you had taken some efforts to see that the main person, the guide was there, the best endeavor clause was there, this would not have been done, and you did not do best endeavor because the person who was having knowledge was not there. So the endeavor which Ibrahim took place was not the best endeavor at all, and therefore the shipping company was fined. This is about force majeure and frustration. Now we are coming to the main topic, whether lockdown is force majeure and whether it can lead to frustration. That is the question before us. Whether force majeure lockdown contracts entered into during the period of force majeure or contract which are affected by force majeure or frustration during lockdown can be said to be contract which are void. Very fortunately for us, like we say, we saw on 21st April, there was a judgment in the matter of, we have seen NAFED versus Alementia. Similarly, there is a very recent judgment of the Delhi High Court in Messrs. Halliburton Offshore Services. Messrs. Halliburton Offshore Services versus Vedanta. Now, this is the judgment which was delivered in very recent judgment, and it is reported in Manu stroke DE, MANU stroke, it is in Manu Patra, Manu stroke DE stroke 0957 stroke 2020. This judgment is not reported in Supreme Court or AIR, but it is reported in Manu. Therefore, I have given you Manu Patra citation. Now, while deciding the question of bank guarantee, the Honorable Delhi Court for the first time has held that prima facie lockdown is a case of force majeure. I will not go into the facts of the case, but Delhi High Court for the first time held while deciding the judgment that prima facie there is a case. This is a case, prima facie lockdown is a case of force majeure, and therefore it injuncted the respondent defendant from invoking the bank guarantee of the petitioner therein. What are the facts? We are not interested. But the subject matter of our interest is the wordings of the Honorable Delhi High Court saying that prima facie this is a case of force majeure. So this is how in Vedanta, Halliburton Offshore versus Vedanta, this was decided. Now, there is yet another Bombay High Court judgment on this subject. Bombay High Court judgment, that is Standard Retail versus GS Global. Standard Retail versus GS Global. And this judgment is a judgment delivered by His Lordship Justice Sayyed, the senior judge of our Bombay High Court. And this judgment was delivered in contempt company application number 404 of 2020. It was delivered very recently. The Bombay High Court at this juncture, though had not stepped in to stop bank guarantee, unlike what the Delhi High Court had done, but really speaking, it is not the ratio of this, because the ratio of this Bombay High Court judgment is not, and it does not decide whether lockdown is for sure force majeure. Bombay High Court, with respect, does not decide whether lockdown is force majeure, but at the same time, Bombay High Court, after noting what is force majeure, after noting few clauses of that, said that this is not force majeure. And the reason why Bombay High Court said is this, that in this clause, so therefore I am saying that please do not compare this with the Delhi High Court judgment, because the facts in Delhi High Court judgment were different, the facts in Bombay High Court judgments were different, and as a matter of fact, Bombay High Court, the Honorable Justice Sayyed, he says that the facts of Satyavrata Ghosh, which I said was the leading 57 judgment of the Supreme Court, says that the facts of Satyavrata Ghosh is different. Therefore, we can safely say that facts of Delhi High Court in Halliburton versus Vedanta are different from this. But why I am citing this judgment? Only because here lockdown is mentioned, word lockdown is mentioned. It has no nexus with lockdown versus force majeure. The word force majeure is mentioned independently. No comparison, no effect of each other. As a matter of fact, the facts were very glaring in this. It so happened that from Hong Kong, the purchaser was to ship in steel. Steel was declared to be an essential commodity in India. Steel was declared to be an essential commodity in India. The contract in that case, the contract, Article 11 of the contract specifically says that if force majeure happens, if something like force majeure happens in Hong Kong, we shall not be responsible. We means the Hong Kong people, the seller should not be responsible. And therefore I am saying that Bombay High Court rightly said that force majeure clause is not there in you because it is not applicable for purchaser. The Bombay High Court says that this is question of invocation of bank guarantee, which is not a contract between purchaser and seller, but which is a contract, separate contract between banker and the seller. Purchaser, I'm sorry, banker and the purchaser. Why should banker be bound by your contract? And therefore the facts are totally different. You can refer, I have given you this, it will consume lots of our time, therefore I am avoiding to go into details, but this is something which is touching the subject matter of lockdown, but really speaking, no ratio has been laid down. Even in Delhi High Court judgment, it was a prima facie view because it was a view at the time of interim relief. This is a prima facie view. Today, there is no judgment in Indian law directly deciding, laying down a ratio whether lockdown is force majeure. But in English law, there are two judgments which I must mention. In English law, there are two judgments directly mentioning that epidemic, this COVID 2019 epidemic is a force majeure. I will give those two judgments. First judgment is Lakeman versus Pollard. Lakeman versus Pollard, our cricketer Pollard. Lakeman versus Pollard. So it has so happened that the person was there. He took job in the company. He was affected by cholera. He could not perform or give these duties. The employer sue. The court says that what is to be done? Cholera is an epidemic. It is an act of God. It is force majeure. So here we have a direct judgment on this point, but this judgment is again of the foreign courts, UK court. Then there is another similar judgment, Combs versus Nolan, COOMBS, Combs versus Nolan. This was the judgment of the year 1874, and Lexman was the judgment of 1857. So 1874 judgment of Combs versus Nolan. Here what had happened, that they were to download the cargo from the ships. For that purpose, horse was required. Suddenly, all the horses in that area suffered as what was called as horse flu. Like we have bird flu, swine flu, horse flu at that time. So horses were not available. Things could not be downloaded from the ships. The court said that yes, epidemic. This is epidemic, and epidemic is force majeure. So we have got two judgments of the British High Court of the UK court, which says that force majeure is something which is epidemic, and epidemic is force majeure. Unfortunately, in India, we don't have the Delhi High Court judgment. Is only a judgment which is a judgment of prima facie nature of interim application, and not finally. Now, while deciding so, suddenly on 21st of May 2020, just four days before, on 21st May 2019, I came across one judgment of the Delhi High Court vis-a-vis tenancy, rent. So the facts of this case were this, that I'll give the citation, Ramananda versus Girish Soni. Ramananda versus Dr. Girish Soni reported, it's not a reported judgment, just 3-4 days before it has come. It cannot be reported judgment, but it was delivered by the Delhi High Court in RC, revision 447 of 2017. RC 447 of 2017. Now, it says, this judgment says that what had happened, the facts were this, that this is the case under the Delhi Rent Act. You all know about Khan Market in Delhi, very upscale locality. So the shop was taken on lease, merely a rent of 350 rupees. When the matter was decided, that time the court took a view that this was very meager amount, and court asked the tenant to deposit 3,50,000, which according to the court was the market rate. The court asked the tenant to deposit. Suddenly, when the matter was pending in the court, the tenant came up with an application saying that please please don't ask me to pay the amount of 3,50,000 rupees for the lockdown period, because during the lockdown period, my entire shop was closed. I could not go and open the shop. Resultantly, there was no question of the shop being opened. The court in this matter took a view that no, sorry, in the Rent Act, force majeure is not applicable. Doctrine of frustration, section 56 is not applicable here, and therefore the court says that we cannot direct that the rent which we had asked to deposit, that is rupees 3,50,000, could be waived, and the court dismissed the interim application of the tenant. But I must point out that if there is an agreement contrary, many a time we see that huge warehouses, take case of used markets like DMart we have got, or we have got Reliance Mart, huge mega store, multi store, and we have got huge shops of or stores of car showroom. There the rents are lakhs of rupees. So there's many a time there is a covenant in the agreement that if there is a force majeure, we will not pay, the tenant will not pay. So there can be a contract to the contrary also, especially in lieu license agreement. But in this matter, there was no contract to the contrary, and therefore, if you see page para 27 or 28 of this judgment, there is a difference between if there is a contract to the contrary, what will happen is there. But here there was no contract to the contrary. So the court says on mere reading of the Delhi Rent Act 108 is not applicable. The Delhi High Court drew for the purpose of basing the law, the Delhi High Court relied upon one judgment of celebrated judgment of Supreme Court, Raja Dhruva Chand versus Raja Harmoinder. Raja Dhruva Chand versus Raja Harmoinder. Here also same thing. These were the two princely people in the year 1947. Prior to partition, there was a contract for the purpose of taking the contract on for cultivating the property. Unfortunately, the property went in Pakistan. The persons who remain in India, they could not complete the pay the rent, and it so happened that at that time there was a default in the payment of rent. Later on, it so happened that after the line was finalized, the line of partition was finalized, the property was there in India only, but at that time for few months one could not understand and there were rights, so he could not cultivate the property. The court said that, look here, if in case of lease, section 56 is not applicable. The court distinguished between section 56, the court distinguished between completed conveyance and executory conveyance, executory agreement. The court said that for executory agreement, that is agreement which is not yet fully executed, 156 can be attracted. But agreement which is already executed, 56 is not attracted. The court says that although rent agreement, although the rent is paid per month, yet the moment the rent agreement is finalized, at that moment the contract is executed, the conveyance is virtually executed, the title to the limited extent passes off, and therefore 56 is not applicable. So this is a case of where rent agreement, our the Delhi High Court just on 2-3 days before I said that it will not be attracted. And therefore, we can safely say that unless and until there is contract to the contrary, you have to go on paying rent or the license fees to your landlord or the licensors respectively, and you cannot avoid payment of the same. Now again, there was an interesting question before we wind up. There was a similar matter in Calcutta, in a very upscale society of Calcutta. A person in a judgment of Surendranath Bibran versus Stephen Court. Surendranath Bibran versus Stephen Court, AIR 1966, Supreme Court 1361. So the Supreme Court considered a very different doctrine here. What had happened was this: in an upscale society, in the year 1954 or somewhere, this person contracted to have a 3 BHK flat in an upscale society in Calcutta. The landlord, due to some reason, could not give him 3 BHK and could succeed in giving him 2 BHK. The tenant gradually says that you please adjust the rent in equity, because instead of 3 BHK, you have given me 2 BHK, you have given me less. The Honorable High Court says, Supreme Court says, while in fact this is a judgment where the court has remanded the matter back to the trial court, but the Supreme Court endorsed a celebrated judgment of Neil versus Mackenzie. It's a UK judgment saying that, well, there can always be adjustments of equity. And this is how the Honorable Apex Court has said that, yes, as far as the adjustments of equity is there, the courts can definitely think over. So you can always make an application to the court saying that due to the COVID, suppose the tenancy is just, the license is just for 12 months. In that 12 months, 3 months are gone in this COVID. 2 months have gone in your furniture. You can always make a application to the court on equitable consideration saying that, well, look here, the court may or may not consider in light of the principle laid in Neil versus Mackenzie. But you can always try to make an application. Nobody has tried it. It is just a virgin territory today, and therefore we have to try. Now, after this, we will consider what is the effect. In short, 2 points are remaining just. Effect of contracts with government. Now, the government, suppose we are entering into contract with government, the government being the very responsible entity, and the government is responsible for maintaining law and order. The government, that is the Union of India, through its Ministry of Finance, on 19 February 2020, issued a circular saying that this act of COVID is declared as a natural calamity for the purpose of contracts entered into between the government the Department of Ministry of Finance, and the concerned party. For example, I enter into a contract with government for purpose of sale of certain goods. For that purpose, this is a natural calamity, and the contract is covered, and the contract is covered by force majeure. So this is how we are. This is how the government is dealing with this cases with reference to contract between them. Now, a very important thing which the builders and developers, now since we are in Thane, majority of our clients will ask you what is the effect about on building contracts. Fortunately or unfortunately, but the thing is this: the disputes are will be avoided. MHARERA, which is the authority under the RERA, has declared that the period from 15th March 2020 to 14th September 2020 is declared as the period for which force majeure will be considered. And contracts which are to be executed in between this period, they are covered by the definition or by the meaning of force majeure. So with this, friends, I have finished with the topic. To conclude with, now just a conclusion note, we have seen what is force majeure, what is vis majeure. We have seen the difference between pacta servanda, and we have seen the difference between force majeure and doctrine of frustration. We have seen section 32, we have seen section 56, we have seen the mitigation circumstances, the doctrine of due diligence we have seen the doctrine of frustration, and doctrine of we have seen the doctrine of force majeure with respect to tenancy, with respect to rent act, and therefore we have seen all this vivid scenario in a panoramic view. Now, only to wind up, I may say that doctrine of frustration is not a magic wand. It is not an answer for every breach of contract. Doctrine of frustration is a term which will be used only for very honest and genuine people, only when there is a serious thing which is impaired the contract. Force majeure impairs the contract temporarily. Under section 56, the contract is impaired perpetually. Their contract is rendered void, and therefore, with this, I end up my lecture, and I thanks from the bottom of my heart the office bearers of the Thane Bar Association. I also thank my colleagues, Mr. Chintan Shah, Mr. Prithviraj Gole, Anusha Amin, Mr. Kiran Bhagat, and Ms. Divya Pawar, who have helped me putting all these judgments which you are seeing on the post which you are seeing. All these judgments are typed by them and put it while I was speaking with you. So I thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for giving me an opportunity to address this illustrious bar. Thank you. Thank you all.
Sir, any questions घेणार आहात का तुम्ही कोणाचे?
हो असेल तर यस जरूर असेल तर मला विचारा.
Anybody want to ask question? Please raise your hand, please.
But Mr. Dongre.
Yes.
The audio video is not available over here.
No, they raise their hand, then I will.
Okay, I got it. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
So I have a query. What's
Yes.
your view on force majeure when it comes to payment of rents from lessees to lessors or from the tenants to their landlords?
As I said, the recent judgment of the Delhi High Court, which I have given you in the matter of Ramananda versus Girish Soni, this judgment is categorically and clearly taken into consideration everything. If the rent is covered by the Rent Act, then Section 56 will not be made applicable, and you have to pay the rent, because if your lease is for a greater period, for example, for 10 years, 15 years, or under the Rent Act perpetually unless it is terminated, then Section 108 will not be affected, and you cannot terminate the contract on the basis of 56. Force majeure will not be applicable for such things. But if it is a license under the Rent Act, if it's license which is given, then you can definitely try working out Surendra Birban versus Stephen Court, which I have given just now, and you can try to seek suspension of rent for that license for that particular period, and the court may do so on equitable considerations.
Okay,
Does that
thank you.
satisfy the query?
Yes, any more questions? Please raise your hand. Yes, anybody questions? Please raise your hand. Yes, Mr. Sachin.
हॅलो.
Yes,
Yes.
Mr. Sachin. Yes.
हा नमस्कार सर.
नमस्कार.
रेंटॅक्स संदर्भाने एक प्रश्न विचारू मी.
हा बोला.
रेंटॅक्सच्या सेक्शन म्हणजे जो लिव्ह अँड लायसन्स संदर्भातले ज्या प्रोव्हिजन्स आहेत,
हो.
आता त्या संदर्भाने जर कॉर्पोरेशन हद्दीच्या बाहेर जर रेसिडेन्शियल प्रिमायसेस लिव्ह अँड लायसन्सने दिलेली असेल,
हो.
आणि त्या संदर्भात जर काही वाद झाला म्हणजे पोझिशन वरून, तर कुठल्या कोर्टाला अधिकार राहील?
हे बघा, आता आपण आहे ना फार लिमिटेड हे बघतो, फोर्स मेजर वर्सेस फोर्स मेजरच्या बद्दल आणि तुमचं फ्रस्ट्रेशनच्या बद्दल असेल तर तुम्ही मला विचारा. कारण
ओके सर.
तुम्ही जो प्रश्न विचारतो ना, तो प्रत्येक म्हणजे तो कुठला ऍक्ट त्याला ऍप्लिकेबल आहे ते बघायला लागतं आपल्याला. मग ते पुण्यामधलं आहे का मुंबईमधलं बघावं लागतं, मग ते सिटीच्या बाहेर ठाण्यामधलं आहे का, ते सगळं वेगळे निकष आहेत, त्याला फार फॅक्ट्स मध्ये जायला लागेल. फोर्स मेजरच्या संदर्भात असेल तर मी तुम्हाला सांगेन, अन्यथा तुम्ही केव्हाही मला तुमच्या कुठल्याही वकिलांना कॉन्टॅक्ट करून तुम्ही विचारू शकता. हा वेगळा प्रश्न आहे जरा.
ओके, सॉरी, थँक्यू.
हॅलो.
हॅलो.
हा सर, प्रवीण डोईफोडे बोलतोय. सर मला एक क्वेश्चन होता, म्हणजे इफ इट इज मीन्स ऍक्च्युली एक सेंट्रल गव्हर्नमेंट एम्प्लॉई आहे जो वाईफच्या डिलिव्हरीसाठी बिफोर मीन्स लॉकडाऊनच्या स्टार्टला आउट ऑफ स्टेशन गेला आणि इंटिमेट केलेलं आहे फॅक्टरीला, तर त्यानंतर त्याला लिव्ह भरून द्यावे लागतील का? बिकॉज ऑफ लॉकडाऊन ही वॉज नॉट एबल टू जॉईन ड्युटी इमिजिएटली, तर त्या संदर्भात काय फोर्स मेजर अप्लाय होईल?
See, as far as central government is concerned, central governments have got their own department, different departments. Yes. So every department has got circulars also. If you want, I can put that circular. We have to understand how different circular. For example, if you are an employee of the SR of the Central Reserve Force, then you will not get all these benefits.
No, I was not under essential duty, sir.
But if it is essential duty and there is a circular in your department, then you will be bound by that circular, and then force measure will not be an answer for that.
Yes, but it was not essential duty actually.
No, if it is essential, therefore I said, you said it was essential duty, but it depends upon the circular of by the department. If it is every department has their own circular, you have to look into the circular of a department.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Guljit sir, please carry on.
Thanks for the real enlightening speech lecture. It's a small query by me. We are advocates practicing on labor side. So, sir, leave aside the law part. I just want your fair opinion.
Yes.
In this force measure will be beneficial to the employees in getting salary by even if they're not working, or it will favor employers that they couldn't get work and therefore they should not be asked to pay.
See, force measure, I will tell you one thing, that many a times you have seen that various different social organizations, government has also appealed that you please do not deduct salary of your people. You please do not deduct the salary of your people. Don't remove them. This is what government is appealing to all the employers. The question is this: these are the appeals.
Yes.
No legislation is there on this ground.
No.
Had it been there is some legislation we can think of. But the question is this: suppose you cannot say offhand. Suppose there is a temporary employee, and if he is removed, take a case just a contractual labor who has been appointed just 2 months ago. Lockdown starts, the employer will be fair enough in removing him. But if there is a permanent employee employed for suppose take a case 10-15 years, the employer removes him, then you can definitely go under the consent laws, MRTU and PL or any other law which is there. You can go ahead and you can definitely sue the employer.
Sir, DMA has blanketly prohibited to do any such thing. No removals, no termination, no layoff, no retrenchment. But salaries you pay full.
But you see,
it is not fair enough on the part of government to declare such blanket orders.
Just see whether that is just a circular. Then if it is challenged in the courts of law, that circular which are nothing but instructions of the what you call that
Advisories.
Just no, not they are advisory and executive facts. Whether these executive fiats and advisories will prevail over the statute, that has to be seen. So if they are just merely advisory, somebody challenges it, it will go away.
In our labor, we all have special acts, and this DMA is also like a special act. So one special act cannot override the other.
Therefore, as you are aware that a special act will prevail over the general act. So you have to take into consideration that also. If you see that it is contrary to some act, if you succeed in pointing to the court that it is contrary to their statute, it is contrary to an act, and these are just advisories which are subservient below the act or below the statute, then what will prevail will be the act. And ultimately, if the statute or the advisories are contrary to the act, the advisories will have to make a way.
So this is a very tricky situation where force
Yes.
measure is applicable to
And
employees
we have
and
to go by
employers
the fact.
both. Who will take the benefit and who will
Yes.
get the benefit?
Correct.
That
This
is
is
a
a
very
tricky
tricky
situation,
situation.
and you will have to go by the facts of every case.
Correct, sir. Correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
This is Anuja Mohile.
Yes.
I head the legal function at Mindshare Fulcrum Group M,
Okay.
which is a media and advertising company.
Okay.
So the problem that we are facing right now with our contracting is that clients are refusing to make payment citing force majeure.
Okay.
And obligations are being fulfilled by us. We are providing services. We are running ads. I mean, all of us can see ads on the television.
Okay.
So in this case, how do we explain that this is not force majeure?
This
Does force majeure
definitely-
has to be does force majeure have to be applicable to both parties in order to qualify in the contract, or I mean, how does it work here?
See, I told you I was referring one judgment. If you had seen when we came to the Supreme Court judgment of executory contract and completed
Mhm.
conveyance or contract, we have seen the judgment of Raja Dhruv versus Raja Harmovinder. So
Okay.
in your case, it is an executed contract. From your side, everything
Right,
is done
right,
except
correct.
payment. Force measure will
Right.
not be applicable in this case.
Okay. And in the reverse case, if there is
Yes.
advance payment being made and
Yes.
the other party cannot fulfill its obligations,
Yes.
in that case, what will happen?
Correct. Now see the other, if it is the other thing that due to force measure, suppose we have to supply the goods. All these
Mhm.
examples which we have taken now, all these are based on that. If you have to supply goods, suppose take a case, you have to supply mask. You have entered into a contract to supply mask to foreign countries. When the contract was entered into, mask used to be supplied. There was no prohibition, no embargo.
Correct.
But suddenly after this COVID struck in, there was a prohibition. Suppose if that is the case, then you cannot. But suppose take a case of that steel. Justice Sayed's order, where steel could be imported in India, it was an essential service. There was no embargo, so why you cannot fulfill it? So that is the question. It has to be seen in context.
Case to
with the
case
commodity.
basis.
Yes,
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, sir.
most welcome.
हॅलो
Hello. Yes.
संदेश सर
Yes.
एक क्वेरी आहे मला
हा.
मी AIWI चा मेंबर आहे
हा.
सर आपण आता म्हटलंय की ते फोर्स मेजर आहे
हा.
फोर्स मेजर देर इज इक्विटी ऑल्सो एज पर द सुप्रीम कोर्ट जजमेंट सर it is applicable to only agreement concerned person, or if there is no agreement,
Right.
can this force measure will be applicable?
See, basis of any contract is agreement. Agreement can be oral or agreement can be written. So,
Okay.
without agreement, there cannot be contract. Na? And without contract, there cannot be 32. Because 32 is part of contract act. So, without there being contract, there cannot be a contract. There cannot be a application of 32. There cannot be force measure.
Okay.
So,
And
oral or written agreement has to be there.
okay. And second query is it's in this force measure only. Now it's for the larger public. Now we have already have it's may applicable no or not. We have already have taken a passes from March to May, first class. All the
Yes,
many
yes.
peoples.
Yes.
Can
yes.
this force measure applicable to the
Yes, it is.
railways?
Yes.
Can
it is.
we claim for that, or
No, how can you? Because it's a force measure. No, how can you claim?
okay?
It's a force measure.
Okay.
Railways are not running, and they're running not running of the sea. This is again a contract between you and the railways. You are paying the money in consideration of this. Railway will ferry you for 30 days or 31 days, any time,
Okay.
any number of time. So this is ultimately contract between you. This contract is hit by force majeure.
Force measure. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Most welcome.
Hello. Hello. Thanks a lot, Sandesh.
Sir, just a thought came to my mind. Dongre sir.
Just a minute.
Hello.
Yes, continue, sir.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
संदेश सर लुगानी सरांचा एक प्रश्न आहे. Yes sir, continue.
Bola.
Just
Yes.
just a offhand thought came to my mind.
Yes.
Now we purchase stamp papers to be executed within a stipulated time.
Yes.
It carries dates when stamp vendors issues to us.
Right.
Then if we are unfortunate that the lockdown extends or we are
Yes.
unable to execute a document within that stipulated period, then
Yes.
what will be the scene like? What can happen?
The government will have to step because it's a duty of revenue. It's a question of revenue. So government will have to step into and increase the period. And government will definitely do it. It will come with some notification under the Stamp Act, and it will have to do it.
Dongre sir, I request the association to intervene and make an application.
Okay. Yes sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Dongre, just see, Mr. Kanoja is asking some question from Long. Can you just put him, since Long
Yes,
is sitting.
I'm trying to unmute them. Yes, Mr. Kanoja.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Kanoja, tell me.
Yes, sir. I have just asked. I'm only Kanoja, Kantila.
Yes, yes, yes.
I have just previously asked that same ki if there is an agreement and there is a without an agreement, the force measure applicable.
Oh,
or,
yeah. So I think I answered that.
Yeah, and I have just apart from that railway the passes which
Okay.
many of the advocate has have taken first class and all. So it's for the all the peoples. I have just had a query which you have already answered.
Okay.
If there is
Thank
a
you, sir.
contract. Thank you,
Thank
sir. Thank you.
Hello. Sir, okay. Or
Okay.
I think there is no questions. Hello. आज आपल्या ठाणे जिल्हा वकील संघटनेतर्फे आयोजित 6व्या लेक्चर्स मध्ये मुंबई हायकोर्ट ज्येष्ठ वकील श्री संदेश पाटील सर यांनी आपल्याला फोर्स मेजर अँड फ्रस्ट्रेशन ऑफ कॉन्ट्रॅक्ट विथ रेफरन्स टू कोविड-19 या विषयावरती खूप चांगल्या प्रकारे मार्गदर्शन केलेलं आहे आणि याचा हॉटेल इंडस्ट्रीज, रेरा, जनरल, प्रायव्हेट फर्म्स वगैरे यांच्यावरती काय परिणाम आहे, याच्याबद्दल काय परिणाम आहे याच्याबद्दल थोडक्यात व्यवस्थित विस्तृत माहिती दिलेली आहे. तसेच सरांनी 1600 पासून ते 21 मे 2020 पर्यंतचे लेटेस्ट जजमेंट्स आपल्याला सरांनी दिलेले आहेत. त्याचा पण आपल्या वकील बंधूंना नक्कीच त्यांच्या प्रॅक्टिस मध्ये फायदा होईल. तसेच सरांनी फोर्स मेजर हे प्रत्येक नॉन फुलफिलमेंट ऑफ कॉन्ट्रॅक्ट याच्याशी कसे संबंधित आहे याबद्दल सुद्धा सरांनी आपल्याला मार्गदर्शन दिलेले आहे. तर सरांच्या आपल्या या अशा छानशा मार्गदर्शनाबद्दल मी बारतर्फे त्यांचे मनपूर्वक आभार मानतो आणि सरांना पुन्हा नंतर परत बोलवूस तसेच संघटनेच्या सर्व कार्यकारिणी मंडळाचे आमचे अध्यक्ष प्रशांत कदम सर, उपाध्यक्ष इंद्रपाल पाटील सर, सेक्रेटरी संजय म्हात्रे सर आणि कमिटी सर्व कमिटी मेंबर्सचे मी सुद्धा आभार मानतो आणि हा कार्यक्रम इथे संपला असे घोषित करतो.
Thank you all.